So good to meet you.
Too. So what's the background? Is this just fun to do, or is it leading to something?
It's both. I had been at our 40th reunion at Brookview. I don't know if you know, but Brookview has a really nice new building.
In my day, it was a Jewish country club.
So tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, I wasn't a member, but in the Jewish community, golf was very big, and there were two country clubs. Brookview was one, and Oak Ridge was the other in St. Louis Park. That's still open. But Brookview, I can't even tell you how long ago was bought by, I guess, the city of Golden Valley or whoever. I left Minnesota in 1974. I think it was after that.
I was talking to people, and this one person in particular, Christy Redelius Palmer, and I were talking about our experience with Golden Valley and just Golden Valley as this, school that only existed for 23 years and seems like it was kind of a bold kind of progressive experiment in public schooling. I might be, exaggerating, but that's kind of what we were thinking. And she's like, we should make, I don't remember who said it first, but really we should make a film about it. And so that's been percolating for a while. And she's been really like a catalyst and kind of, helping me believe that this is something that I can and want to do. And then I got a little overwhelmed with the scope of it. So I thought, all right, just do the interviews, just talk to the people. So that's what I'm doing. So right now it's just like, let's get as many people on camera recording, talking about, their impressions and memories and thoughts about Golden Valley High School and Golden Valley as a town. And then we'll see where it goes from there. I think it will become a documentary, which I think will be cool and exciting. And, it'll have an audience of at least Golden Valley, maybe Minnesota, and maybe nationally. We'll see how good it is.
Yeah, that's the first thought I had is, sure, all of us who went to Golden Valley would be interested in it, but I wonder who else. Unless you can find some pearls of unusualness or a core of a story. And I mean, I was there from seventh to 12th grade. My piece is very small, but you said you had your 40th. How long ago? What year did you graduate?
83.
Okay, so you weren't much before it closed, right?
I was there for the closing and the merger.
Okay, because I was 66. So there was no when I
Yeah.
came when I came to Golden Valley in 7th grade, there was no middle school. The high school was 7 to 12, and there were 400 kids. So imagine how small that was. I mean, and then I would say probably when I was in the 8th or ninth grade, they built the middle school. And now suddenly there were 800 kids. But I came from Jordan Junior High School in North Minneapolis to Golden Valley, and it was like going from a public university to a private college, and that's for me, it was like an unbelievable change and experience. And when a school closed, I wasn't surprised because it was the smallest independent school district in the state, but it was sad. We have had,
Yeah.
just so you know, we have been up to the 50th reunion, and we're coming up on 60 next year. There were 97 people in my class. We had 62 at the reunion. 17 had passed away. Think about that. So we were, at the time of the reunion, we were 65 or six. Well, no. Yeah. 50 67. We found every single person in our class, mostly using Facebook. And since I don't live in Minnesota, I wasn't involved in planning, even though I was the class president. Doesn't matter. And now there's a closeness. We had calls during COVID for our class. I was just up at Pequot Lakes last summer, 2 summers ago, with a bunch of my classmates. Some of them have been doing it for years. So if you imagine, I just talked to one of my high school classmates last week who just had surgery, and I called him to check in. So the closeness is still there. And I said to him, gee, are we having a reunion? He lives in Minneapolis. He said, well, I'm not planning it. So as the guy out of town, those people see each other often still. Here's an interesting thing. Out of our class, we had 4 marriages, 4 couples, which is pretty interesting out of 97. So anyway, so I lived on Natchez and Glenwood, so I could walk to school, okay, down the hill. I'm a non-athlete, which in Golden Valley was a significant thing because in 7th grade, they threw me the ball in the basketball court and I didn't make a basket and nobody talked to me for 3 or 4 years, which tells you something about the school. I mean, I wasn't miserable, but I was more of a academic student, very involved in music. I didn't know it then, but today I'm a theater musical director, and definitely my music interest started with Mr. Anderson. Definitely. I was not a good trumpet player at all, but I was very active in the band. We went on a band trip to Winnipeg. By my senior year, I was directing the band at Pep Fests and Friday night basketball games. So I thought that was cool. And it led me to go to University of Minnesota, major in music because of that. That's another story. I didn't major in music. But one of the interesting things about the Times is our principal, Mr. Saunders, was a former band director. So every Friday night when I was conducting the band, he was playing whatever instrument was missing. So you have to imagine the principal sitting and playing in the band, only Gold Valley. I found out much later that Mr. Anderson had a church choir that rehearsed on Friday nights. So that's why he wasn't there. And I thought that he was putting me there because I was this very skilled future potential music student, but actually I was just convenient for him. So band, I would say my major connection to the school was music, was the band.
I see your cool drum artwork up there.
That's a piece, it's one third of a New Orleans jazz band. If I had the whole one, it would take up more than the whole wall. I couldn't afford it. I just bought one piece. It's probably 30 years old. One of the things I remember vividly is the teachers. You know, there was a I have 2 or 3 teachers who I have on Facebook. 2 of them just died, and it was a big deal. I mean, we were all commenting about them. And then you think, God, you remember these people from 55 years ago? I can't even think of any of the teachers. Yeah, there's one teacher who's still on, the guy who was the basketball coach. The second, I mean, we had several. I was there 6 years, so but certain teachers, Bob Lockwood was one who just passed away. Everybody talks about Tom Benepe, who was the football coach at my time. I'll just tell you one story about him, and I told this at our reunion. So I was the junior class president, and we were coming out of a assembly in what was called the cafetorium at the time. I don't know if they still, well, it's not anything. And he walked up to me and pinned me against a locker. Literally, he's the football coach. But I was big. And he said, with his bad breath, "You're going to be the senior class president." He was the advisor. And I said, "Mr. Benepe, I don't think that's really up to you." You know, I was the politician at the time. I said, "That's really up to the class." "No, it's up to me." Well, P.S. I was. And I don't say this to brag. It just tells you about the school. I was the class president twice. Anyway, I mean, the teachers had these relationships with us. I don't know if most high schools do, but that was significant. I mean, I can remember literally every teacher that I had, at least in high school. I don't know about junior high. And that's got to say something for the school. I felt like it was a private school, period. We had that much attention. It was small classes. At our reunion, the 50th, they did a tour of the school, and we all went and literally couldn't remember where anything was because it's so different now. I mean, they built additions, and my greatest regret is that we didn't have theater. We had theater, but not musicals, which today is a huge part of my life. But we didn't have the stage, we didn't have the resources, and it's interesting because it was a fairly wealthy district, yet it didn't make it.
Yeah. And then they built a kind of state of the art theater auditorium
Right, I was in it. Yeah, yeah.
2 years before the school closed or something. It was pretty
I thought that I always forget if it's Brick or Blake. Is it Brick?
wreck.
I thought they built that. Wow. Yeah, that's quite a facility. You know, the other thing is that the school was so small that I think teachers taught things that weren't their specialty. I mean, again, they all had teaching degrees, but, you know, I'm sure it's the same for you. You remember teachers who you thought were a lot older and they weren't. We had one woman who came, I think, about freshman or sophomore year, and all the guys thought she was the hottest thing on 2 feet and treated her like it, and she loved it. Now, today, that would be the worst thing you could do. And if, you know, Mr. Benepe pushed me against the lockers today, he'd be fired. Bob Lockwood was the baseball coach and a math teacher, though I don't think I had him. I think I had Homer Moeller, loved his name. I had Moeller for at least 3 years. I may have had Lockwood once. Homer Moeller was from Mott the Spot that God forgot, North Dakota. He always told us that. And see, I still remember it. He was the principal and the basketball coach in Mott, and then he came and was the math teacher in our school. So he's one. Lockwood was another. The other guy who passed away in the last year is Buzz Flolid. Buzzy was the wrestling coach. He was an amazing teacher. All of a sudden, I forgot what I had him for. Science? Not sure. I was in his room the day Kennedy was shot. I remember that vividly. And there was a TV about this big sitting there. And We never got to watch TV in high school, but he turned it on. So Floyd was a big name for me. The greatest influence was Bill Anderson, who was the band director. Band and choir. I didn't have to take choir. He was there for years and years and years. And I wish I had kept touch with him. I know he's gone now. Ironically, he was also the director of the alumni band at the University of Minnesota. So I thought he was going to be my great connection. And like I said, I dropped out of music, but after I graduated, because of him, I played the alumni band just for him. So he was a huge influence on me. The other person that sticks out is Frau Wivel, who was a German teacher. I had her for 4 years. I got all A's until my last quarter. She gave me a B, and I was furious. And I asked her why. She says, "You didn't do your job." You know, there was no, I guess what I'm saying is I don't remember any automatic anything in that school. We really had to work. And that has a lot to do with a lot of who I am. I mean, that the education was amazing. One interesting thing for me, and you don't know what I did, so I'll tell you, my whole career was in the Jewish community. I became the head of the Jewish Community Centers of North America after working in Minneapolis, Buffalo, Columbus, where I am now, Los Angeles, and back to New York. So I couldn't hold a job. I moved all over. I tell you that because a big part of my life in junior and high school was not being religious, but I wanted to be active. There were only 7 Jewish kids in my class. So one of the reasons my parents moved to Golden Valley, and you asked about this, was I was the only Jewish kid in my class in North Minneapolis. And they wanted us to be around other families. And we had it, but it ended up the school didn't contribute to that. And why would it? I had to go elsewhere. But because I was active in the school, I became active in my youth group. And I've been the president of everything ever since. And it started with Golden Valley. I was the president of my university organization at the Minnesota. So it was formative. I honestly can't remember a bad experience there. And you could tell I love being at Golden Valley. I did. I felt very lucky. All of my friends were at St. Louis Park, including my future wife. Like I said, our class was 97, hers was 700. Huge difference. And I guess the other, I'm trying to think of name memories, teachers. Oh, I mentioned Ray Saunders, principal, was just this warm, wonderful person. And you don't think, you think of the principal being a tough guy, but he was wonderful. And as I said, I had a personal connection to him because he was a music guy. So I'll tell you one story you wouldn't use in a movie, but it'll tell you who he was. All of the schools that we played at the time seemed to be hours away. Eden Prairie, Shakopee, you name it. I mean, we were in this weird conference.
What was that conference called when you were there?
Minnesota Valley Conference.
Okay.
So we were on a bus. No, there was a bus going to the game. I don't remember where. I'm going to say Eden Prairie. And I was in a car next to the bus. And one of my friends, who was the heavyweight wrestler at the time, mooned the bus. So Monday morning, we get to school and I get called to the principal's office. And there's this inquiry about what had happened on Friday night because somebody on the bus reported it. And of course, at the time, it was a fairly unusual thing to see. And this guy was a huge guy, and he's trying to discipline us. And he looks at me and laughs. In other words, I know you weren't part of this. I wasn't. I was just sitting there. But it was so hard for him, at least in my view, to be the discipline principal. He wanted to be a nurturing principal. Great guy. P.S. That wrestler went on to be the chief pilot trainer for American Airlines. He was, we were the Vietnam era. So several people from our class went to Vietnam. He was one. He was a pilot. Then he became a commercial pilot. And at our reunion, he had just retired from American Airlines. He was the guy who taught all the pilots. The other thing that I don't know about your class, but it's so interesting to see where everybody ended up. It is very sad. 60 years later, last week, the guy who was my very closest friend passed away. Now, he was not close as an adult, but as kids, we were inseparable. So I read it. His son posted it online because I had him in my Facebook friends. So I immediately wrote to the person in our class who does the newsletter. And then there was this another day of sadness.
What was that person's name?
Tommy Launder.
Tommy Launder?
Yeah. And the reason I say this is who would normally care at age 75 or 76 about somebody that they knew at age 16 passing away? Because you don't think about that. No, I will tell you one, speaking of that, one significant story of my senior year. One guy in our class who was an athlete had got cancer, and he would come to school. He wouldn't come to school. He died at the very end of our senior year. We were all hoping he would make it to graduation. The principal, Mr. Saunders, called me at home. And of course, there was great sadness. And he said, "You need to tell the class." And I said, "I'm a kid. What do you mean I need to tell the class?" What an incredible experience it was to stand in front of your peers the next morning and tell them that somebody passed away. Again, who would think that in high school? You know, thank goodness that doesn't happen. And I specifically remember we canceled senior skip day because of him. And then it totally impacted our graduation because the sadness just continued, even though everybody knew he was not going to live. It's not something you think about. And his name was Jim Raymond. Just a wonderful, wonderful human being. The other memory of the time is we could not schedule anything Monday night extracurricular because Batman was on. Batman was on, I think, 2 nights a week. And literally, we all had to go home to watch Batman. And for me to think it was 60 years ago is like nuts. Most of my memories go to my senior year. Obviously, it was the most recent and the most things happened. The other thing is I told you nobody talked to me for 3 years. Well, somehow when I got really active in band and became the president of the class, I got to sit at the jock's table. The head jock was the son of Dorothy Elmquist, the cook. Now, I don't know how long Mrs. Elmquist worked. Her son Jerry was the center on the basketball team. Dear, dear friend. We used to double date. At graduation, it was boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, but we had more boys than girls. So here were these pairs. And then Jerry and I walked in last because we were the two tallest and everybody got hysterical. But one of the things I remember was making it to the jock table. I found out that Mrs. Elmquist, we had buttered bread. What an unhealthy thing sitting on the counter. Terribly unhealthy. And you could take it as you walked out. Mrs. Elmquist saved the ends of all the bread and buttered them and gave them to her son's table. Again, what a stupid thing. Why do I remember that? Because I happen to like the ends of bread. And nobody knew that the jocks got different food than everybody else. So, even today, when you watch any movie about high schools, there's the nerds table and the cool kids table. Well, that existed in my day. So I guess I made it. I made
Nice.
by 10th grade. I was cool.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was cool. I didn't think I was any different. I still was concerned about my grades. But the thing about a class of 90 is everybody knows everybody and you get judged really quickly, which is not different today. I don't remember bullying or people not getting along, but boy, there were cliques. So, I guess I would say that if I had to summarize it, Golden Valley was just formative for me. I feel very fortunate that I went there. I don't think I would have gotten to do what I do if I had gone to North High School, which is where I would have been. Both of my sisters went there too. My dad went there, but it was very unique.
Where did you guys live in North Minneapolis? Do you remember?
I lived on 2926 North Xerxes, which was on the edge of Minneapolis and Robbinsdale. If I walked across the park, I would have been in Robbinsdale. So I was not in a typical Jewish area of Minneapolis. All my friends were Catholic. I used to go to their house for Christmas. By the way, there's a site on Facebook called North Minneapolis Jewish Kids, which is a reminiscing site about Plymouth Avenue and all those things. So just like there's a GVHS, site, I'm a big Facebook guy just in terms of connections. There were several significant things in my life, and there's a Facebook page for all of them. High school, the camp I went to, the camp I directed, each theater thing I've been in. I have this huge group list. So yeah, we moved. My dad grew up in North Minneapolis. My mother grew up in South Minneapolis. North High School, South High School. There was a place called the Southside Neighborhood House, which was like a community center that where my dad was the youth worker. He met my mother. They got married. He went to law school. And my dad was you stay in Minnesota, you don't go elsewhere person. Ironically, my sister went to Wisconsin and my other sister went to USC and UCLA and then USC, but started in Minnesota. I went all the way through in Minnesota because I was the kid. And then we lived in two houses in Golden Valley, by the way. First, we lived on Natchez, and my mother had loved this house on Burnside Drive secretly. Loved it, loved it, loved it. One day she went and bought it and didn't even tell my dad. So think we moved there after I graduated. It was around that time. I'm not sure. And my parents lived in that house till they died. But so, I primarily lived in that one house, the Natchez house. Just
Mhm.
the other day, somebody posted on Facebook, look at on Google Earth and Google Maps at your former houses. And I did it. And I looked at my Xerxes house, which looks so different. And that's another interesting thing, look back at Golden Valley, where people lived and how far they were from the school and how they connected. I saw that Bob Madison had posted. He's a great historian. Bob was in our class, and at our reunion, he did a whole visual thing on Golden Valley, on the town primarily. So you should, if you haven't got him on your list, you should absolutely talk to him. None of us knew he loved that stuff, and he really did. More than, I'm just a reminiscer. He actually is a historian. So you probably don't know this, but Ric Flair, professional wrestler, very famous, went to Golden Valley for 2 years. His name was Ric Fleer, Flehr. His father was an OBGYN who actually delivered my wife. Rick is in my Golden Valley yearbook, my ninth grade Golden Valley yearbook. He wrestled at Golden Valley. I think he played football. He was a huge guy then, but he didn't graduate. I think he left after ninth grade. He was a year behind me and went to the University of Minnesota and then on to be a professional wrestler. But um, he's a big name. I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't graduate. It's hard for us to claim him. But all of my friends who are wrestling nuts, which I was at one time, I'm not anymore, are just amazed that I knew him. And there was another guy a couple of classes behind me named Gary Juster, who became a huge wrestling promoter, primarily Washington, Baltimore. He went through all the different alliances. I don't know. I actually taught guitar to Gary when he was in seventh grade, but he's not a well-known name, but he went all the way through Golden Valley. And he promoted Rick. So at one point, a wrestling show came to Columbus. This is my first time here. I left for 25 years and came back. And I took my son and I arranged with Gary for my son to meet Ric Flair. And when I went backstage, Rick said, Alan, how are you? I remember you from Golden Valley. He didn't remember me from shit. But Gary told him who I was. But anyway, it was a thrill for my son. So I was happy. So that's a little piece of famous person.
So when we first moved up to Minneapolis from Waterloo, Iowa, my family, we lived in Robbinsdale on Twin Lakes, on Lower Twin Lake, in a townhouse. So we're living in Twin Lakes. We lived there for 1 year, and then I moved to Golden Valley. And one of our neighbors was Mad Dog Vachon, who probably wrestled Ric Flair, right? They were kind of around.
Oh, yeah, they're the same era.
Yeah. And wrestling was a lot different than what we see now. It was not as polished.
But it was still fake. But Minneapolis was a hotbed. And Vern Gagne, who was very active, trained people like Ric Flair and many others. Minneapolis was like the center of professional wrestling, but a very different professional wrestling.
Yeah. Okay, so let me your sisters were older or younger, or how did it go?
One was 9 years older, one was 6 years older. Both went to North. They were both gone by the time. Well, one was still home when we moved to Golden Valley. My sister, by the way, the oldest, whom I mentioned went to California, was a film writer
Cool.
originally and wrote for a guy named Norman Lear. And before All in the Family, and she wrote part of the movie Divorce American Style that he did. And then she went on to become a shrink. And she wrote a book called Make 'em Laugh: Lifestyles of How Hollywood Comedy Writers. And it talked about the psychology of comedy. And the primary person she had in there was Norman Lear. I mean, neither one followed a path anything like mine. One got married, one didn't. My oldest sister was a bipolar lesbian, but nobody said they were a lesbian and certainly didn't say they were bipolar, so she was an interesting character. So I was the one who followed the path my dad wanted. My dad was originally a social worker, and that's what I ended up majoring in. He was a lawyer, as I said, for 63 years in Minneapolis. So, and my parents were active in the Jewish Home for the Aged, Mount Sinai Hospital, which isn't there anymore. Jewish Home for the Aged is now Shalom Home. That's where I got my Jewish community stuff, both of them. My mother was the musician, which is where I got that piece of me. When I first started music directing, she was the accompanist for all my shows. Today, I'm very angry with her for not giving me piano lessons because she was an amazing pianist. It is a huge skill that is limiting me as a music director. It's really funny. So the good news is I learned how to conduct from Mr. Anderson. I've conducted a Columbus Symphony Orchestra. I mean, it's a hobby, and he's the guy who trained me. I didn't take a class, nothing, and now I'm doing these. I just finished a musical with 50 people with a 12-piece orchestra. So it's become my retirement life. It was not my professional life. I stopped directing theater and music. Well, I didn't. I did choir work, but a very wise man when I retired, he was a university president, said to me, "Don't try to be in your retirement what you were during your career, reinvent yourself." And
Mm.
I reinvented myself as what I always wanted to be in the first place, which is a music director. So it's fun. I do other things like after you, I'm going out to medical school at Ohio University. I'm a standardized patient for two medical schools, Ohio State and Ohio U, and I work with medical students, which is I do primarily to keep my head active along with the music. I mean, I always have music next to me that I'm looking at. But again, I wouldn't do that. I would never be doing music direction if not for Golden Valley High School.
So Anderson and Flolid, well, Flolid was my principal, and
Right. I think he was assistant principal when I was there. That's true. I forgot that. Yeah.
then Anderson was there for me as well. So he was there for quite a long time. Who was the I'm dying to know who the young, attractive teacher was.
Her name was Calabrese or Calabrese, something like that.
Okay, I don't know her. I
Taught,
was
she taught health and
perfect.
sex education. That was all.
Wow.
So you have to imagine being in with attractive teacher. One time there was a guy in my class who's long gone, who was the 95-pound wrestler on a team. Wonderful guy. He was short, hugely ripped, muscular. His biggest issue was that we didn't have a gymnastics team. So, you know, the lobby and it has I beams above it. Okay. I tell the story, most people can't imagine it. He used to walk out this way on the I beams hanging above the lobby, let go and do one hand pull ups. And it drove Mr. Saunders crazy.
Sure.
So one day in health class, she said she made him take his shirt off and flex. And he used to be able to roll his stomach muscles in and out. And I'm thinking today, if a teacher did that today, can you imagine?
He was a good anatomical.
Exactly what he was. She wanted everybody to see every muscle on his body, and he ate it up.
Right.
He didn't object. So at one, he became sadly a pretty heavy drinker our senior year of high school. Pot was just coming in. I don't know if anybody smoked pot. I wasn't aware, but a lot of kids drank. And his mother accused me of buying booze for him because I looked like I was 21 and he looked like he was 16. So, I mean, it's all silly stuff, but that's how close we all were. We all
Yeah.
knew parents. At my reunion, I would say I had a story or a remembrance of almost every person who was there. I mean, there was one guy I was looking for who there were three top line jocks in our class. One, Hub Nelson, came up from a family of four boys, and the Nelsons were top jocks in every class. Jerry Ohnquist was another, whose mom was the cook, and Lee Mitchell was the third. And I was looking and looking for Lee at the reunion. On the way out, I bumped into him because he looked different. He just looked different because he got older. At our 25th, two of the guys in the class wore their basketball uniforms from Golden Valley to the reunion. And in our class picture from the 25th, there they are in the middle with the brown and gold uniforms. Apparently, well, the schools, I think, already closed by then, and they found a way to get the uniforms. I mean, everybody wanted stuff from the school,
Yeah.
but that was a funny memory that they actually wore their uniforms and
Oh,
the fact they could fit. I mean, I remember being in better shape at my 25th than many of the athletes who already had guts and the whole bit. By our 50th, we were just all old. And, you know, I think there are people who just have a fear of having a 60th because so many people are gone. And I certainly am not in a position to tell somebody else to plan the reunion. And I don't live there, you know. So, I mean, I haven't lived in Minneapolis since 1974. Do you still live there or are you someplace else?
I'm in Brooklyn. I'm gonna go back there. My mom still lives there. She's in Naples, Florida right now. She does the winters there, and then she's gonna we drive as a family. We go on road trips. We drive my mom around. She's doing pretty good, but we don't want her driving cross country by herself and she doesn't want to fly. So my sister and I reconvene with my mom. We all get in the car and drive halfway across the country 2 or 3 or 4 times a year, which is probably pretty unusual, but we love it. And it's
Uh,
like, because you're forced to connect. It's like you're in a car. It's like, what else are you going to do? You got to talk.
yeah, my dad did that with us every summer. He picked a different direction. He was a history buff and took us to different places. Like one time we did a Lincoln trip. We went to Springfield, Illinois and Washington, D.C. I was in 40 states by the time I was 10, if you can imagine. Doing the same thing you just said, except with us, it was the three kids in the back seat and the parents in the front with no air conditioning.
Anybody smoking in there? Probably not.
No, but my sister, my middle sister, became a heavy smoker and actually died from lung cancer and
Mm.
brain cancer. And she started smoking when she was in high school, and she died at 46. So she smoked for 30 years and it killed her.
So what was your career after you graduated college?
I had a scholarship for high school, for college, for I'm sorry, for graduate school. I went right through graduate school to Master in Social Work.
Oh, and you were a social worker.
Yeah. Well, I never really did that, but that's what I was trained to do.
So what'd you do?
Well, Jewish community centers and everything I did in my career were related to social work.
Well, that's right. I mean, you were a big shot for the, like, national JCC,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But it was the core of the JCC work at my time. Just imagine a camp. It was about working with groups, teen groups, camp groups, and it was year round groups. So I was a social group worker. Even though I was also trained to do therapy, I never did it. So I owed B'nai B'rith, which gave me the scholarship. I owed them 2 years after graduate school. So I was the head of the B'nai B'rith Youth Organization in Minneapolis, Minnesota, North and South Dakota. So I used to get in my car and drive to Fargo and Bismarck and whatever. And then the guy at the JCC of St. Paul said to me, "It's time for you to go." And he made a call. And he said, calls me back. He says, "You're going to hear from Bill Grossman in Buffalo, New York." I said, "Who the hell is he?" He said, "He's my mentor and he's going to be your mentor and you're going to move to Buffalo." I said, "Wait a minute. My wife and I just got married 2 years ago, 4 years."
It's kind of like Benepi. Did he push you up against the wall
No,
to?
no, he just called me. Lovely guy. He's still there, not working, but still alive. He's in his 90s. And literally, I got a call from the guy in Buffalo. He said, "I want you to bring your wife out." Nobody brought wives out for a teen worker job, just didn't spend the money. Today, nobody moves. And I moved to Buffalo, New York as a camp director and a teen worker. And I was there 8 years and worked my way up in the JCC to be assistant director, opened a new building. And then Columbus was opening a new building, and I became the executive director here for 9 years. And this is where I really started doing theater. So I was the executive director and conducting all the shows.
That's great.
And then moved. So I was in Columbus for 9 years. So that was 17 years. Then I moved to LA for 3 years. They had a system of JCCs. It was my mistake. I tell everybody you can have one bad job in your life. And I was there 3 years. But because I was there, got offered the New York job. And I was in New York for 20 years.
Really?
I was the head of the JCC movement for
Well,
United States,
that's
Canada.
let's put a pin in that and come back to that in another conversation because I want to talk about that. I'm out of time. JCC was a big part of growing up for me. That's where I spent a lot of time at the JCC.
Well, there's a lot to talk about because there's a brick with our name on that wall.
Yeah. Well, so I live in Brooklyn now, but I'm going back to Minnesota. I was thinking I would go in April, but the fundraising isn't quite there yet. So, but I think it will be. And so I'm planning on May and June being in Minnesota, and I'm going to drive. And I would love to stop and say hello if you'd have me in Columbus, so we could do it in
So you
person.
pretty much go through here. Most people go through here on the way going west.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm only gone the first week of June.
Okay.
Other than that, I should be here all summer.
Awesome.
My grandchildren live here, so I don't go anywhere. That's our life. And we became grandparents at 72. So I have a 3 and a 4-year-old grandchild. So you can imagine being my age and having grandchildren that young. And they didn't live here originally. They moved here 2 years ago. My other daughter and husband moved here. So I have my whole family here.
That's great.
We moved here, we had no one. So just imagine. Yeah. So like next week's Passover, they'll all be here. All right. Keep me posted.
I will. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was really, I love doing this. It's a labor of love talking to my
Thank
Golden
you.
Valley people. Really, really wonderful.
Okay, we'll keep in touch.
We will. All right. Have a great day.